All right, so good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I'm with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And we're really excited this May because we just came off this wonderful April all about climate change and climate research. And in May, we're diving right in with biodiversity, celebrating amazing animals from around the globe. So we're really on that theme today. Right now, we've got 5 classes joining us from across North America. So I want to give them a chance to do a bit of a shout out. We've got Miss Hughes' grade 5s in Lufkin, Texas. Hi, guys. Hi. Hey, the only American classroom today, I might add. We've got Miss Pearson's grade 3-4s in Calgary, Alberta. Hi, guys. We've got Miss Smith-Combs, grade 5-6s in Iroquois Falls, Ontario. Hi, guys.
Look this way.
You can look any way you want. Doesn't matter. Camera, screen, it's all exciting. We've got Miss Furnival's grade K's, kindergartens and grade 2s in Guelph, Ontario. Hi, guys. Hi. They're squeezing this in before lunch. I love it. And then we've got Miss Langer's class, grade 3-4s in Cobourg, Ontario, who, yes, I think they made it. Hi, guys. Hey. Yeah. Of course, the reason you guys are all here today is for our speaker. So we are joined live by Rachel Bell Irving at the Vancouver Aquarium. And today she's in the Arctic Gallery and is going to walk us through some of the most amazing Arctic adaptations and creatures that live in the high north all around the world. Without further ado, thanks so much for joining us for the 97th time, Rachel. And take it away.
Has it actually been 97?
No, probably not, but it seems that way. It's exciting. We always have you.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Jesse. So as you said, my name is Rachel, and I am an educator for Ocean Wise. We're a conservation organization that is internationally working, but based out of Vancouver. So we're on the western side of Canada. I'm currently standing in our Arctic Gallery at the Vancouver Aquarium, which is located on the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations peoples. And we thank our Indigenous communities for being able to allow us to teach and to live and to learn in an amazing ecosystem. There's a lot of biodiversity in BC and in Canada in general because we are surrounded by those 3 coasts, coast to coast to coast. And the Arctic is one that many people around the world forget about, but does have an impact on everybody's lives as well. So we're going to talk today about some of those amazing animals you may or may not have known live up in the Arctic, including some of the big, cute, and cuddly ones, and some of the less adorable ones that I personally do adore. So we're going to talk about why biodiversity is important, why should we care, and just have some fun exploring these really cool creatures. So without further ado, let's start off with some big animals, of course. The first ones that come to my mind when I think of the Arctic, I think of animals that are very fat to accommodate for the cold, and pinnipeds are the ones that first come to mind. So pinnipeds means fin-footed. So you're looking for anything that's got those big flippers that help them swim through the ocean. So I'm going to share my screen here. You're going to see Jesse's face for just a moment, and then you'll get started there. So there he is. And we're going to start off with some of those pinnipeds. So there are 4 species of Arctic pinnipeds that live solely up in the Arctic. We've got the ribbon seal, bearded seal, ringed seal, and of course, one of our beloved walrus populations as well up in the Arctic. And every animal that you look at that lives up in the Arctic are basically Arctic survivalists. They all have different special characteristics that are going to allow them to survive in a very harsh climate, especially when you're looking at like -30 degrees Celsius, you're looking at long summer days, you're looking at really frigid, icy cold water. It is one of the most extreme climates on Earth. And you have to be able to survive as an animal. So as scientists, we always like to start off with those abiotic features, those non-living features, thinking about where they live. And that helps us understand why animals look the way they do. They're always going to adapt and evolve based on their home. So if your home is really cold, many of these animals have adapted and changed over time in order to accommodate for that. So for example, if we look at my wonderful picture of a seal here, and I think this is a really good time for us to actually get a little bit of a warm-up activity with everybody together as scientists. We know that the home we're looking at is freezing cold. It's got lots of ice, probably some predators to worry about. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to make some observations about this wonderful, wonderful seal. And then I would like, Jesse, your help to go to each class and get one observation from each of them, just something they notice about the seal, whether it's big, small, anything like that, maybe even where it's living, any kind of observations we can make from the picture. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds. take a look, make some observations, whisper to your friends, and then we'll go to each class and get some of those observations going.
Dun, 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 dun. Right, a little Jeopardy theme music.
I feel like I should have a soundtrack when I do this.
We should. We'll make that happen for the 98th hangout.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, sometimes you only have a very short window of time to make observations in the wild with these animals. So Jesse, if you don't mind helping me out, and let's go to each of the classes to see what kind of observations they came up with.
Absolutely. We'll start with Texas and Ms. Guse's class. What do you guys see in the seal?
I noticed that, like, in its hand, it has, like, little claw thingies, like, pointy little claws.
Oh, that's a great observation. Its paws had those nice, awesome claws. I'd love for one other person in your class to add to that. Why do you think that has claws?
Why do you think it has claws, Mark?
I think it has claws for it has claws for hunting and also to grab the ice if it starts slipping.
Awesome. That was great teamwork. Thank you. So grabbing the ice, hunting, that was awesome observation. Perfect. I'm going to come back to that. So let's go to another class and see what else we noticed.
Yeah, Miss Pearson's class. What did you guys notice? Oh, I don't know if we can hear you guys. Oh, I see you making the observation, but we're not hearing it. It's like a reverb of me. Okay, we'll go to second class. Sorry, guys. We'll see if we can get that working. So Miss Smith Combs class, what did you guys see?
I saw that it had a lot of weight to keep it warm.
A lot of weight to keep it warm. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. Did you want them to follow up on that? Is there anything else?
No, that's good. I want to get some more of them. We're all going to work as a team and get some of those observations. So that's a great one.
Okay.
We've got claws. We've got weight.
Yeah. Okay. So Miss Furnival's class, did you guys notice anything?
Whiskers. Yeah. It was really, really fat. Nice and loud. Did you hear that?
Really, really fat. Yes.
Really fat. That's a good description. We had weight and we had fat specifically, adding on to that. Awesome. And there's one more class?
One more class. Okay, Miss Langer's class. What do you guys see?
Okay, nice and loud.
Shiny fur.
The shiny fur.
Ooh, shiny fur. That's a cool observation too. Awesome. I like it. So we've got awesome claws, which we made a hypothesis on. We think it's for climbing out. We've got thick weight, probably due to fur, the fat. We've got shiny fur. Those are some fantastic observations and good descriptive words. No one mentioned that it was a seal. We all just said, I noticed this specifically. And that is a really good observation skill to help us build a bigger picture. So let's take another look at my seal. And we'll kind of dive into that. I've got a wonderful class here for a second. And let's bring back our seal. So starting with those claws, I think that was a really great hypothesis. It's probably used for hauling out onto the ice. So you have all of that weight and all of that blubber to help you survive as a seal in the cold water. And you have to have a way of getting that thick body up onto the ice. Sea ice is critically important for all of these Arctic animals. It is the foundation for their survival. Seals have to have a way of getting up on the ice so that they can have their pups and so that they can take a break and have a rest, because even though they're great for swimming, it's hard to swim all the time. So sea ice is vital for all Arctic animals to survive. Great observations. And the shiny fur, very cool observation. There's a couple reasons why. It looks like it's probably a bit dry right now. Maybe it's been sitting out for a while, but they do have a special fur that lies flat against their body. And that's kind of like them wearing a wetsuit almost. It keeps out the cold water away from their skin. And then the blubber underneath, all of that fat keeps them insulated and warm. So that shiny fur is super important. It's a water repellent and it's going to help them survive. So great adaptation observations. Let's keep those ideas going, and we're going to look at some more animals that I'm going to share with you. So we've also got, of course, our walruses. Now here at the Vancouver Aquarium, we are very fortunate to have two walruses, both about 2 years old, named Balzac and Lakina. They originally came from the aquarium to Quebec. So because they're young, you'll notice that something is missing. They're kind of, doesn't look like they have any of those tusks growing in yet. Not to worry, they are there. Even in the kind of through the whiskers, you can see a hint of white, and that's just because those tusks are growing in. Both males and females will have the tusks, and a lot of people think it could be for actually digging up their food, which is a little bit of a myth. Those wonderful tusks, which are basically just super long teeth, are really important for being able to, again, pull that massive body out of the water, because walruses can weigh pretty much the weight of a car. They can be tons in weight, and that can be obviously a lot of power that they need to get their bodies out of the water, and the tusks really help with that. And of course, they might help males as well to fight for territory, to fight for mates. When they're looking for food, they're using those wonderful whiskers. Something that all the seals, pinnipeds really have in common is these wonderful whiskers for sensing their environment. The Arctic can be really dark sometimes, especially when you're going down to that silty bottom, stirring up a lot of dust. You don't always have the privilege of being able to see very far. So having sensitive whiskers is a fantastic adaptation for finding food in an environment that might be really cloudy or might be very dark. Awesome. Pinnipeds are one of my favorites personally, but we also do have a number of different whales. We've got a whole bunch of whales, dolphins, and porpoises that might travel through the Arctic at some point in their life. And because of climate change, because we're seeing the temperatures warm, we are seeing more southern species start to move up more north. So orca whales, for example, we are finding a lot more north into the Arctic, which actually could be a bit of a problem because they're such good predators. Orca whales can outcompete, or they might hunt the other whales, such as beluga whales, for example. And beluga whales are one of the best ways for us to explore how cetaceans being whales, dolphins, and porpoises, how they survive in the Arctic, because this is the perfect image of an Arctic specialist. From toe to tail, we've got a lot of different adaptations that allow them to survive in this really difficult habitat. So let's do a couple more observations. Let's give you 30 more seconds. Let's take a look at the beluga whale, and then I'll share with you some really cool facts about this Arctic whale. So 30 seconds, make some observations. Let's go.
Perfect. For Miss Pearson's class too, in case the audio doesn't work, top left of your screen, blue square, white lines. You can type in questions there. We'd love to get some observations from your class in case the audio is not working. But yeah, just wanted to point that out, guys. All right.
All right, our beluga is going to swim away in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's disappeared back under the ice. So let's see if we've got some observations from the classes. What did you notice about our Arctic specialist, the beluga whale?
Perfect. We're going in order again. So Miss Hughes' class, what did you guys notice?
They noticed that it has a hump on its back.
Okay.
Good observation. Yeah, most whales, dolphins, and porpoises have a dorsal fin, so a big fin sticking out of their back. Beluga whales don't. They actually have a dorsal ridge. So good observation.
Okay. Miss Smith's class, you guys see. Oh, I'll demute. Don't worry. I can demute you from here. There you go.
Okay, sorry.
That's all good. What did you notice?
Their eyes are super low, close to their mouth.
Their eyes are super low, close to their mouth?
That's really interesting. Yeah, where the position of the eyes are. And that could be for a couple different reasons, maybe to help them find food or spot predators around them. Cool observation.
Yeah. Miss Furnival's class, what did you guys notice? So many hands. I love it.
Nice and loud. It's really tall.
Really tall, really long. Yeah.
Ooh, really long. Awesome. Being long and skinny might help you move through the water better.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then Miss Langer's class.
Hey, Sophie, run up. Run. You know this.
I noticed the big thing on its forehead.
The big thing on its forehead. That's called a melon. That's a good, very good observation. I'll talk about the melon in a second. Awesome.
And I love the enthusiasm to get there. That was really, we love that sort of thing. Miss Pearson's class, we'll come to you guys. Get volume with you guys this time. Come on up. Come on up. Let's see. Come really close to the computer. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah. We noticed something. Okay, we'll come back in a bit, guys. Let's dive right on, Rachel. Sorry, guys.
No worries. I can hear the teacher almost heard the student, so maybe there's a positioning thing there. So those were some really fantastic observations, and beluga whales are really a great example of that epic survival skills. So you notice that it had a dorsal ridge rather than a dorsal fin. If we think about that habitat again, they're a world covered by ice most of the year. So having a dorsal fin might be a little bit tricky when you're trying to get through all the sheets of ice. So that might be one of the reasons why they have evolved to have a dorsal ridge rather than a dorsal fin, not making sure you don't get stuck in the ice as you're trying to find your food. And that melon that you notice, the big lumpy part on the front of their body, also a really cool mechanism. It moves. It actually can jiggle. They can move it kind of like we can move our chins. If you think about that, they can move their melon the same way, and it allows them to make noises. Belugas are called the canaries of the sea. They can make over 30 different types of clicks and whistles and calls that they use to communicate with each other when they're in the dark ocean to help mothers find their babies. So that melon, very useful as well for them to communicate in the Arctic environment. You might have also noticed that they're white, pretty cool camouflage for, again, an icy environment. And they're also very thick. They've got lots of blubber. Now, I'd like everybody to make a cowabunga symbol if you stick out your pinky and your thumb. And if you stick your pinky in your belly button, that's how much fat you would have as a beluga, all the way out to your thumb, and that would go all the way around your body. So imagine trying to swim around with a mattress of fat wrapped around your body. It can be very, very difficult. And another cool adaptation with our beluga whale is they actually have very little flippers. I'll show the picture again in a second, and you'll see that their flippers, those front flippers, are quite tiny compared to the rest of the body. And the reason being, when we get cold, like our fingers and our toes tend to go cold first. So having small hands actually does help the beluga make sure they don't lose quite as much heat. And before I move on to another animal, one other really cool thing about belugas is they can do two things that no other whale in the world can do. They are the only whale that is able to do two epic little things. One, of course, is that they're able to actually move their lips. So if you can try it yourself, you can move your lips, make a kissy face, make a duck face. That is a special skill that only beluga whales can do. And they do that to help blow bubbles underwater, which is a pretty cool trick. They can actually blow water under the water so that they can stir up the sand and they can find their food that way. So one thing they can do that no other whale can do, belugas can actually make a duck face, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, the other thing they can do that no other whale can do is this. That's simple. Something that no other whale in the world can do. Belugas can actually turn their neck side to side. Try it yourself and you'll see as a human, we can do that too. We can turn our neck. We can go up and down. It's a great skill to help you find food, help you avoid predators, as well as every other whale. However, their necks are fused. They're stuck. They have to do this if they want to actually find anything. So it's a really cool adaptation that only beluga whales have. So that's another great example of an Arctic specialist. And the one other thing that I'd like to point out about Arctic animals is we cannot forget the little guys. This is one thing that many animals or many people might overlook, and that's the invertebrates that live in the bottom of the ocean. So the Arctic is actually full of hundreds of different types of invertebrates, so animals that have no bones. If you take a look at the back of your neck and you'll feel some of those weird bumps back there, that makes you a vertebrate. That makes you a bony animal. But invertebrates have no bones, and because of that, they come in lots of different shapes and sizes and colors. So I even brought a few pictures of them. We've got a few here as well. We've got a neat collection of Arctic invertebrates. And the odd thing about Arctic invertebrates is that they tend to be larger than their southern counterparts. I don't really have an answer as to why. It's called gigantism, and we see that a lot both in some certain species of fish as well as some Arctic invertebrates. So we've got a few Arctic invertebrates here, a few arthropods as in the shrimp, there's echinoderms with our sea urchin, there's worms, there's even a type of octopus, there's some jellies, sponges. We get pretty much every type of phyla represented up in the Arctic when it comes to invertebrates. And these are the bottom of the food chain. These are the animals that the fish are going to be eating, that the predators are then going to eat the fish. And so we can never forget these little ones that are at the bottom of the food chain, because they are the food source that is going to support every other animal in the food chain. So there are lots of different types of animals. One other thing I think I should point out, of course, is birds. These are some fish. I'll show those in a second, but birds are a big part of the Arctic as well. Seabirds are indeed sea animals because they do rely on the ocean for their food, for their habitats as well. So there's a couple examples of those seabirds. And then I pointed over some penguins. That's a bit of a trick question, something you can trick your friends with. How many penguins live up in the Arctic? Actually, let's see if we can maybe pick on Jessie for a second. Jessie, do you know how many penguin species live up in the Arctic?
I do. Do you want me to go to a class? Or
Yeah,
do you want
sure. Why not?
Okay, let's go to Miss Furnival's class. How many penguins are in the Arctic, guys?
How many species of?
How many kinds of penguin? Yeah.
2 million.
2 million? That's a lot of penguin species.
Does anyone have another guess? 2,000 maybe?
1,000. We have a lot of. This is a very exciting penguin world. The world is being overtaken by penguins. I like the desert. Okay. Do you want me to answer to prove that I know what it is, Rachel?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
So it's 0. So we have no penguins in the Arctic. They're all in the southern hemisphere. So Antarctica, we've got some in Africa, which is really cool, some in the Galapagos, but none go above that line. So there's no penguins in the Arctic, although I wish there were 2 million species. That would be super cool.
That would be very cool indeed. So that's something that you can take back, boys and girls, to trick your friends and family. Ask them how many penguin species live up in the Arctic, and the answer is 0. No penguins live north of the equator. So that's how we can always tell. There are 18 species of penguins in the world. Only 3 of them are found in cold habitats, and that's Antarctica. That's down south. The rest are found usually around South America, Africa, across islands. So no penguins north of the equator. It's a trick question, but it is fun that you can try and mess up with your friends. So the Arctic is full of different animals. We've got our big, cute, amazing megafauna. We've got our small little invertebrates. We've got fish. We've got birds. There is a really wide diversity living up in the Arctic. And the reason we care is because every one of these animals has a job to do. Whether they're prey, whether they are population control, everybody's got a job to do in the food chain. And if we remove one of those pieces of the puzzle, then that ecosystem can start to get sick. So if we have lots of different types of animals, hopefully that means somebody else can fill the job and do that job for us. And that's why we look at biodiversity. Biodiversity means there's lots of different types of animals in an ecosystem. And that means there are lots of different types of animals that can do the jobs that have to be done. If we start to lose biodiversity, we start to lose that safety net, that kind of net that's going to keep the ecosystem safe. And humans are just as much a part of that as well, because we rely on the ocean for our survival. Animals need it to survive, and we're all really just working together on this planet. So I really encourage you, boys and girls, to try and see if you can come up with a way that you are connected to the Arctic, whether it's through maybe a water cycle, maybe it's through something that you eat, or maybe if you've ordered anything from Amazon, it might have even been shipped through the Arctic as well on a boat. So we use the Arctic on a regular basis, and maybe you can see if you can brainstorm some ways that you are connected to the Arctic where you live. So that's all that I have to share for today, but I'd love to know if you have any questions or curiosities or things that you wonder, and I'll do my best to try and find you an answer.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Rachel. Before we dive into questions with our classes live, I want to know we've got a whole bunch watching on YouTube Live. So if you guys want to type your questions into the chat bar on the right, I'll pass them right on. So please do that. Don't be shy. I know Ms. Furnival's class needs to go in a few minutes. So what we're going to do is take 2 questions from them to start, and then we'll go through all the rest of the classes, I promise. So Ms. Furnival's class, do you guys have a question about Arctic animals to start?
Sure, we do.
Right.
So I haven't heard the question yet, but she's going to ask it. We're going to see. Go for it.
How many different animals live in the Arctic?
That is a very good question, and I do not have an actual answer for you because there's still a lot that we don't understand about the Arctic, about the ocean. So maybe if we get some more exploring done, then I will have a specific answer for you. There's quite a lot of species that we know about, but maybe there's some species we haven't discovered yet.
Okay, very cool start. And then we'll take another one from Ms. Furnival's class, just to make sure you guys get a second one in.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
She's coming up.
Oh, you're good. No hurry.
Okay, over
Is
here.
there some unknown Arctic
Hold on.
animals?
Can you just lower down a little bit? There you go.
Is there some unknown Arctic animals?
I think so. I bet that there are probably quite a few different types of unknown Arctic animals that we haven't discovered yet. So if you like exploring, then maybe you could be an Arctic explorer when you get a little older, and you can help us discover some of those animals that we have never found yet.
Yeah, Rachel mentioned earlier invertebrates too. So maybe there aren't any new whales to find, but there are tons of things in the deep sea and in the dark depths and in the ice that we don't know yet. Every time we go exploring, we find new species. It's really cool. One of the coolest things in all of nature. Great question. All right, we'll start back up at the top. Ms. Hughes' class, if you guys have a question, come on up.
He's coming up. You have to ask it.
How long do beluga whales live?
Oh, how long do beluga whales live? They can live to be 25 to 30 is pretty normal. In human care, we've seen them live around 40 years old as well.
Yeah, one of those species that live longer in captivity because all their predators and difficulties are taken away, which is nice.
If you get good human care, then we can sometimes extend the life, which is really cool.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Miss Pearson's class. Oh, Miss Pearson's class. So just come really close up. Really close up to the computer, and you should be good. If not, you'll have to take questions.
Is there any Arctic animals endangered?
I heard that one. Any Arctic animals endangered? Great question. Good thoughtfulness. There are a lot of Arctic animals that are in danger for a couple of different reasons. With climate change, we're noticing that the Arctic is getting warmer a lot faster, and it's not refreezing as quickly either. So the Arctic naturally melts and refreezes, but right now it's melting really, really quickly, and the ice isn't coming back as fast. So it's getting warmer up in the Arctic. And one of the biggest problems with that is other species that are normally would never be able to go up to the Arctic are now able to go up a little bit farther north. So orca whales are a good example. And also the red fox is another really good example of these species way down here that are now able to go up into the Arctic because it's not quite as cold. And they might eat the Arctic animals. They might outcompete the Arctic animals, as well as other diseases survive better when it's warmer. So the warming ocean is a big concern, as well as more boat traffic can harm some of the Arctic animals as well.
Okay. Great answer. All right, Miss Smith comes class. That's hard to say. You guys have a question? Come on up. And so curiously, there you go. You're good.
How come penguins waddle?
How come penguins waddle? That's I thank you for asking that. That's a unique question. Penguins waddle mostly for what we call center of gravity. So the reason humans slip when we walk is because our feet are spread out, and that makes our balance wonky. So when you're walking down a slippery sidewalk, the best thing you can do is waddle, because that way your weight stays right here and you're not tilting it between 2 feet. That's why they waddle. It actually makes them a little bit more balanced when you're on a slippery surface. It also means they can't go very fast, which is probably why they started sliding to get where they need to go, because that's usually a little bit more effective if possible.
Very cool. All right, Miss Langer's class. You guys have been waiting so patiently. I appreciate it. So yeah, come on up, and you're good to go.
Nice enough. Yeah.
How many animals are in the aquarium?
How many animals are in our aquarium?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Our aquarium it changes every day, but our aquarium has around 750 different types of animals. So that's around 45,000 individuals. And we count every snail and crab and all the little guys as well.
Now, is that your specific job, Rachel? Do you have to count all the snails every day? Because that seems like a lot.
Thank goodness I don't. All the teams that help take care of the animals, we do what's called a census, which is basically a count. And then we have one person whose job it is to make sure that count is as accurate as possible. So we do our best, but they're little.
Awesome. I want to go back to Miss Langer's class just because I don't want that poor girl to have to stand up there the entire way back around. So if you want to ask your question, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Ainsley, and why do the seals, why are they so fat, and why do they weigh so much?
Or how do they get so fat was her question.
How do they? Yeah, that's a good question, because they have to be fat in order to try and make sure they stay warm. It's the same way when you go out in the cold, you put on a nice jacket. That way they can keep their jacket with them at all times by having all of that blubber. And they get the blubber from the food they eat. So having a lot of fish in your diet gives you a lot of really good fat, and that makes sure that they stay nice and warm.
Awesome. All right, we're going to take some questions from groups online. So Miss Brown's class, grade 6s in Frederick, Maryland, want to know, what's your favorite part of your job, Rachel?
Honestly, my favorite part of my job is probably doing this because it is a lot of fun to talk with people and get my brain thinking too, because I learn something every time I do this, which is really fun. So I do enjoy talking to classes around the world. The other favorite part of my job, I think, is learning, because like I said, every day I get to come to an aquarium and there's something new going on, whether it's a new species or I get to talk to someone else that maybe I haven't worked with yet, and I get to learn about all the different animals. So it's really fun being able to learn and then tell stories about what I've learned.
Very cool. All right. Miss Arco's grade 7s from Mentor, Ohio want to ask, why do whales have holes, those little holes on the side of their head? What are those?
That's a really good question. The holes at the top of their head are for breathing. Those are the blowholes, so they don't have a nose like we do. If they do, it's for smelling, not for breathing. Quite interesting enough. But the other holes, there's another hole in your body as well that you can use to get by. We have these little flaps that indicate it, but many animals don't have the flaps. And so likely those are the ear holes that you're observing. It's either going to be the blowhole on top or actually just where their ear canals are as well.
Very cool. All right, last one from online, and then we'll do another round and hopefully get even more. So this is Miss Olivieri's class, grade 4s in Independence, Missouri, and they want to know, can Arctic animals get frostbite?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I haven't heard of any Arctic animals getting frostbite, mostly because they are adapted to avoid that. And some of them even have even weirder adaptations aside from fat. So we think about fish, for example. I've actually got a couple Arctic fish behind me. A lot of these fish come with an internal antifreeze, like a special type of chemical that is in their body that prevents their organs from freezing. Because if you put like a salmon up north, for example, it very could possibly freeze. But these types of fish that are specifically adapted for the Arctic have an antifreeze inside of their bodies to stop the organs from freezing. So haven't heard of any animals getting frostbite, and they've got a couple different ways that they try to avoid getting frostbite in the first place.
Right. The only example I can think of, which we know penguins don't live in the Arctic, but if you guys watch, there's a new BBC series called Dynasties, covers emperor penguins, like March of the Penguins type thing, and the penguins that stand out in -70 for like 3 months, they can freeze because that's the worst thing imaginable. But other than them, nothing.
There is such a thing as too cold, so it's always a threat for sure.
Sometimes Canada gets too cold. All right, let's go back to our classes, guys. Miss Hughes' class, if you guys want to kick us off on our second round, come on up. I knew you were coming. Your hand's been up the whole time.
What would happen if the Arctic disappeared?
That's what a lot of scientists are trying to ask right now, or trying to figure out. One of the leading theories is with the ice caps, with so much ice being up there, if they were all to melt, then possibly we would see a rise of sea level all the way around the world. So that's one big concern that we're worried about, is the sea level rising, and that can damage a lot of our homes around the world. So that's a big concern. And then the other concern, again, is we need the Arctic for a couple different reasons. Sometimes we fish up there. There are a couple thousand of people living in the Arctic. So a lot of First Nations, Indigenous communities live in the Arctic and survive up there, which is incredible. And so their homes would then be hurt and destroyed, and that's horrible to think about. And always, of course, losing that kind of biodiversity of animals can make ocean ecosystems sick and can spread around the world. So there's a lot of physical damage we're worried about with the Arctic, and losing some of those amazing species that live up there as well.
Right. Let's go back to Miss Pearson's class. Just remember to come really nice and close up to the camera.
How many Arctic species are in your aquarium?
Oh, how many are in our aquarium for Arctic species? Well, that's a good question. I'm not going to guess. I don't know how many specifically, unfortunately. What's cool about our exhibits, if you ever do get a chance to come visit us at the Vancouver Aquarium, we'd love to have you. We are a non-for-profit, so everything that you bring to us helps to take care of all of these animals. Every habitat is pretty much like a working ecosystem. So honestly, there are some species in here that I never noticed because they were hiding under rocks for a couple weeks and then they pop out and whatnot. So we do have quite a few invertebrates. We've got quite a few fish. We're one of the few organizations that does have our Arctic fish collection, and we'll work with other accredited aquariums to help them do a really good job of taking care of their animals. So that's a really good question. I don't know the specific number. I can say that we have the walruses, the fish, and quite a few invertebrates as well.
Okay. I want to take some quick ones from online before we go back to our classes here, and then we'll wrap up. So Miss Brown's class wanted to know how many penguins are born at a time?
Oh, that's a good question. Most penguin species that I'm aware of only have one chick at a time. So they will do their best to take care of that chick and make sure it survives. Hopefully, that's kind of where that frostbite question would come in as well. Those chicks are vulnerable to cold, especially. So usually one chick at a time, and they're doing their best to take care of it.
Right. And then the other question from Miss Arco's class is, why don't penguins live in the Arctic? Why did they stop at the Galapagos?
That's a great question. I have no idea, and I would love for you to go explore and see if you can come up with a hypothesis of why that is. It might be the way that the continents shifted. It might be the temperature. It could be at some point their ancestors might have been able to fly, so maybe they just didn't fly up north. I have no idea. So I encourage you, maybe you can come up with a hypothesis as well and do some research.
And in 15 years, we will do a following up with one of the students from these classes to understand the penguin distribution. I'm very excited. All right, Miss Smith-Combs class, if you guys have a second question, come on up.
Is it possible for a penguin to have 2 chicks and 1 egg?
In 1 egg? Oh.
1 egg.
I mean, I would never say that nothing is impossible. I don't know of any case studies off the top of my head. Jesse, have you ever heard of any evidence of that?
I've never heard of 2 animals coming out of 1 egg. I could be wrong. That seems like the sort of thing that could happen, like Ripley's Believe It or Not sort of thing. But
they could
never
have 2 eggs. Like that might be. I think it's more likely they would come up with 2 eggs than 2 animals in 1 egg. But nature is mind-blowingly amazing. So I'll never say never. I just haven't heard of an example of that yet.
Okay, good question. Put us on the spot. I like it. All right, we'll wrap up with a question from Miss Langer's class. I know some groups are going to lunch, so if you guys want to end us off, go right ahead.
What is the food chain in the Arctic?
What is the food chain in the Arctic? That's a cool question. And you can try and build it yourself as well. Every food chain is pretty much the same, where it's going to start off with what we call a primary producer, so some kind of plant. In this case, it's usually algae. And then you're going to have the little animals like invertebrates and then little fish, and it just gets bigger and bigger in size. And then some animals might cross this way. And so we usually call it a food web because it's a lot more complicated than just a straight line. But you look up some species yourself and see if you can build your own Arctic food web. You always want to go from littlest to biggest, generally speaking.
And a really quick follow-up on that before we wrap up. What's at the top of the Arctic food web? What are some creatures that are like nothing eats them?
Yeah, polar bears would be one of those big famous top ones, of course, and that's a whole other, we could spend a whole program talking about polar bears because they do have some amazing adaptations to help them survive. And never forget that even the top animals of the food chain are still susceptible to certain things. If we think about humans, we are at the top of that food chain as well, even in the Arctic food chain. And we're still susceptible to things like disease, for example. In polar bears' case, we're worried about habitat damage, habitat loss because of that sea ice melting, things like that. So polar bears would be one of those animals at the very top of the food chain, and even they are not out of the woods yet.
And may I just say that if you guys are interested in polar bears, we've done a series of hangouts with a woman named Elisa McCall. She's amazing. Great polar bear hangouts. Just wanted to point that out. Rachel, before we wrap up, is there any last message you want to share with kids about Arctic animals, how they can learn more about you guys too and your work with them?
Yeah, absolutely. If you'd like to learn more from Ocean Wise, you can either visit ocean.org or education.ocean.org. We've got lots of resources and stories to share with you about animals all around the world. And the best thing that you can do is keep being curious, keep asking these questions, and then see if you yourself can find out the answer by talking to experts like us, going out and doing some research. There's a lot that you can discover, and that is the best way we're going to be able to come up with some solutions for the future, is doing our best to understand the problem and then telling people about the problem. So keep being curious, keep following up on those questions, and see what you discover yourself.
Super cool. And I really do urge all the classes to check out Ocean Wise's website. It's the most robust educational platform for ocean things in the entire world. So do check that out. It's really great. All right. At the end of every hangout, what we do, boys and girls, if you guys could get ready and join me in saying a huge thank you to Rachel, Miss Hughes' class, Miss Smith-Cummins' class, Miss Langer's class. You guys are all demuted. Thank you so much, guys. I love the enthusiasm. Appreciate you guys all being here. And please do join us for the rest of the month. Amazing biodiversity hangouts. Rachel, pleasure as always. And look forward to having you back very, very soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. Have a good day.